Today, I wanted to talk about extroverts escaping into their own inner world. The reason why I wanted to talk about this is because it's very common for introverts to do that. And in fact, by the way, I want to make sure I make this note real quick that if you do not really know what an extrovert versus an introvert is, I recommend my video on extroversion versus introversion. I break it down. And I even show a little bit of like graphics and stuff like that on there. It's not as simple as you think. There are louder introverts and there are more reserved extroverts. It all depends on like which dominant function you're using, etc. And on top of that, I would even go as far as to say that there are extroverts who actually recharge from being by themselves. And there are introverts who actually recharge from being out in the external world or like with other people. It all depends on the type. It depends on certain other things. So yeah, it's a tricky thing, and I would recommend that you check that out. But if you already know, if you're an extrovert and introvert, or you already know the differences between that, then cool. This video is going to be focused mainly on extroverts and them escaping into their internal world because it's not something that I ever see getting talked about. And so introverts, the internal world, their internal world is what's the real world to them. Whereas extroverts, the external world is what's the real world to them. So introverts focus more of their energy on the inside, on their internal world, whereas extroverts focus more of their energy on the external world. That doesn't mean that they all recharge from the external world, and that doesn't mean that all introverts recharge from the internal world, but they focus their energy in those directions. And so I just wanted to clarify that. And we don't really hear much about extroverts actually like building an internal world or escaping into this internal world in a way. And so I wanted to shed some thoughts on that, at least share a little bit of my experience and some ideas based off of this. And I wanted to see what you guys probably thought about that. So I remember as a child, I used to literally, I guess like, well, no, literally, probably, yeah, like literally, I used to lose myself in the Pokemon games, the classic ones, and then even like the newer ones that ended up coming out. Like my first Pokemon game was Pokemon Crystal, and I remember I used to like actually play that a lot, and I would really like get sucked in. And the reason why I really liked these games is because in these games it's a role playing game. So you get to put your own name in there and you actually start making friends. These aren't friends that are like in the real world that are also like playing with their own characters and interacting with you, but these are built-in computer program friends. But you're in this whole world in the Pokemon games, whether it's Kanto or Johto or any region that they're placing you in. You have a mother in the game. You have friends that you're making and stuff like that, including the Pokemon. So it's not even just the Pokemon friends, but also like actual friends. Like you can call them and stuff like that, and they're like asking you to come and battle with them and hang out and everything. And it was a whole world in itself. And then on top of that, you have your Pokemon friends that you get to collect and train and raise and really build a bond with. And not to like sound like depressing, but like growing up, I wasn't the most popular kid. And so that was actually my escape. In fact, Pokemon was a even bigger reason as to why I was not as popular. I was made fun of like for being dark and African and the Pokemon geek, stuff like that, which further pushed me to actually getting more into Pokemon because I saw them as my actual friends. So it was even to the point where I had my favorite Pokemon, Espeon, and I befriended Espeon so deeply that my actual, I made a few other geeky friends in the real world, just two of them, who actually played Pokemon as well. And every time that we'd be able to meet up with each other in Sunday school or something like that. Well, after Sunday school, because we didn't want to get caught and stuff like that. Then if we would battle and everything, it would be funny because they knew how much I loved my Espeon, and they would be like waiting for that Espeon to come out. And I had a tendency to, if my Espeon was about to lose, then I would want to turn off the game because I was that close with my Espeon that I was like, no, 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 I can't let her lose. I can't let her lose. Like, I treated her as if she was like a real person. This continued to like grow even more as the Pokemon games like developed. And then they started actually having like happiness be a thing with the Pokemon and everything. And you can like check with them and you can like walk with them and all these other things. Now you even have this a little bit in Pokemon Go and stuff like that. That was like my escape back in the day. And that was just like one example. But another example was the series of Unfortunate Events books by Lemony Snicket. I read through them 1.5 times, almost two actually, but yeah, 1.5 times at least. And I loved those books. And I really loved the recent Netflix series too. The movie was okay, but I didn't like how they combined the first three books and they tried to like do too much. And Klaus is not supposed to be a cool guy, as in like suave cool. I think they made the Klaus guy a little bit too cool in the movie. But in the books, he was cool, as in like he was very intellectual and he was very nerdy, but like not like geeky nerdy, but more of just like he was just knowledgeable. He had the glasses and stuff like that. I thought that it was cool. But when I got lost in Lemony Snicket's series of Unfortunate Events books, I allowed myself to befriend the Baudelaires. I saw myself as another one of their siblings. I felt their pain. I allowed myself to really like anticipate all of the moves. Like, I really put my heart into that. And it was to the point where even when I was around the midst of like, other people, they were not as interesting to me. I was more interested in continuing to live the life that I had with the Baudelaires, even though it was very, I don't know how you like, even though it was like very unfortunate. It was just a series of unfortunate events, but even throughout the midst of tragedy, that's where you grow tighter bonds. But look at this. They're not real, at least as far as we know. And so why was this extrovert, who's supposed to be more inclined to the external world, so obsessed with these figments of someone else's imagination that they were able to place into the pictures, or into the pages of a book, or into the data of a video game? That helped me. That was like coping mechanisms in a way. Those were my escapes into my internal world. I even also had like imaginary friends, not in the classic sense of where it's like, oh yeah, here's Billy sitting right next to me, Dad, don't touch him, kind of thing. I'm really like telling everything now, but hey, meet Denzel. But more so, I had at least like 20. I think all of the Christians are probably going to be looking at me like, oh, he was hanging out with demons. Like, but like, I had like at least 20 imaginary friends. They all had different personalities and different voices, and I could literally be in the basement in a room by myself. I had no phone. I didn't have like as many video games and stuff like that. And so what I would do was I'd just end up acting out all of these friends. And it was real to me. And that was, even though it was like in the external world, it was all in my head. It was an internal world thing. In fact, my INFP younger sister was able to even join in on that sometime. Like she created her own friends to join in on there, and they like we learned all of the voices. Not We didn't even have to like necessarily like teach. We just somehow it was fun. We just grasped it, and then the two of us were able to be in this room together and hang out with all of these different people. Like we'd be having like parties, and we knew whose voice was who, and we knew whose personality was more like this and stuff like that. And that was amazing. But yeah, even like that was a good bonding moment for us. It'd probably be weird for her to revisit that right now, but it was fun. And for me, when I was like enjoying all that time like by myself, that was still me also like escaping into my internal world. And then nowadays, I start to see this a lot more with like movies and shows. Like I like to really watch a show, or I like to really watch a movie, which I think is common for like a lot of people. But as you're really watching a movie or really watching a show, you really allow yourself to get sucked into it and feel the emotions of the character, and you start to just grow with the characters, and you start to anticipate certain things, and kind of like how I was talking about like with the Baudelaires, it's like, you just get sucked in and zoned in. And I feel like that's also something that extroverts even can find as an escape for their internal world. It's like, okay, there's a lot going on right now. I just want to go. For me, it was like I just want to go and watch Graceland. Graceland, I have like three top favorite shows, and in order, it'd probably be The Blacklist. I talk about that a lot, and Graceland. I talk about that show a lot, and then third would probably be Arrow. And then fourth, maybe Luther. They all have this like common theme. If you guys watch any of those or all of those, and if not, I recommend and talk to me about it. I'm always looking for people to talk to more about The Blacklist. Or the Great Graceland is such an amazing show. I'm watching like, I love Graceland so much. I'm not caught up on the latest season of The Blacklist, but I'm trying to be really soon. I'm hearing that it's coming out on Netflix in September. So, but anyway, side reel. Yeah, I think that for me, that was very exhilarating. That was all helpful for me to be able to escape the reality of the world that I was living in and go into my internal world. Now, the distinction as an extrovert, in my opinion, is that we, as I said at the beginning, the real world for us is the external world. And so, even though we may escape into our internal world, it can only hold us but for so much or so far before the real world eventually yanks us back out. Eventually. And after enough of that, I believe that that's when we start to take charge, and we're like, okay, I believe the healthiest of extroverts start to be like, you know what? Since I have to keep on coming back and out into reality, I'm going to take all of the things that I've built into my internal world, and I'm going to bring them out into my external world one way or another. So I actually wrote this because I was just off the cuff, but I actually wrote this more cleanly. Extroverts use this place to escape, but because the outside world is more real for them, they can only hide in this fortress for so long before they must face their form of reality. And the most healthy will then be motivated to create what is on the inside into the outside. So essentially, what I just said. And then the second point that I had was I'm inclined to believe that introverts take from the external world and hold into their internal world more frequently, whereas extroverts try to build more in the external world and store less in the internal world. And so that's in a way like some of the stuff that I think about, like extroverts, because they're forced to, in a way, live in the external world, and that's what's more real for them. Then they still escape into their internal world. I believe that that's a thing that extroverts often still do, depending on the extrovert. However, they just can't stay there nearly as long as introverts can, because for introverts that is their real world. Just as like for introverts, I feel like they probably can't, for some reason, like stay as much in the external world as they can, so they can't really like focus a lot of their energy there. So of course, where you live at the most is where you're going to build a lot of stuff the most. Like if you're staying at your girlfriend's house, then you're probably going to have more of your belongings at her place than you will at your own place, because that's the place that you're spending more frequently. So eventually you're just going to start migrating a lot of your stuff from like your old place over to that place. And so for an extrovert, we still have our things inside and we love to build stuff inside. But because it's like at the end of the day, we always have to come out into the external world once more, then it's like, okay, we have to bring this stuff from the inside into the outside. And I think that's how a lot of us start to bring out visions, because now it's like, okay, this is my vision. The vision was created in me. For me, it's and I stuff. So I'll build this whole world of an I in my head. I'll build like kind of like what I said about Martin Luther King Jr. once upon a time. Like, he said, "I have a dream," and once he had that dream, it's like he tried to push that into the external world that he lived in. I believe that he was an ENFJ. Not that INFJs are incapable of doing this. I believe that both types can both extrovert and introvert types can do what the other can do, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult in the sense there's going to be a little bit more resistance, and it takes a little bit more development in certain cases. And so I believe that Martin Luther King Jr. like he had this dream and he did the best that he could to push it into the external world, and he wanted it to materialize there. So the ideal thing, of course, would be to build as much as you can in your internal world so that you can bring it out into your external world. If you are an extrovert, or even an introvert, if you want to make a difference in the world, of course, then try start learning how to like use those extroverted functions to bring out all of those beautiful things that you already have in your internal world into the external world, which would be a little bit more difficult because your extroverted functions are less handy for you, if you will. But the more that you continue to develop them, just like an extrovert, the more you continue to develop your introverted functions, and the more you start to meet in that middle ground and bring things out into fruition or build more into your intuition or whatever it might be for you. So yeah, of course, at the end of the day, I can't really have Pokemon, and I don't really know the Baudelaires, and I don't really feel or like get to hang out with FBI agents in a house called Graceland and experience all the things that they go through and stuff like that with them and build a bond from that, observing all the dynamics. Like that's not reality. But what I can do is play Pokemon Go. No, I'm just kidding. But what I can do is try my best to then build those same types of dynamics in real life. They don't have to come from tragedy, like it was forged through with the Baudelaires and everything, but maybe sharing my vulnerability and darkness and all of that, and seeing how spreading those seeds of potential with people can then flourish into something more beautiful, which I've been talking about a lot recently, like a garden of great intimate relationships with people who are actually worth watering frequently because they produce the fruit for me. Stephanie Vasquez and I, my ENFJ sexual five friend, made a video recently about all of this, and we called it soulship. And I feel like this is in a way me now being able to bring what I had in my internal world out into the external world. So yeah, those are my thoughts, and I wanted to just go ahead and share them with you guys and see what you guys thought. I don't really know if I'm necessarily teaching anything from this or I have some type of goal with it. It was just one of those passive thoughts that I was like, oh yeah, I kind of want to share this, and maybe it might help someone. Maybe it'll start a conversation. So yeah, who knows? But let me know what you guys think, and if you're an extrovert, tell me how you've escaped into your internal world in the past, or how you even do right now. Yeah, yeah. I think that's all. Done.